This is Leon here. I'm a psychotherapist and life coach, and today I want to talk about how to have a healthy sense of hope and how having a healthy sense of hope is different from having very fixed expectations about how life should be in a way that would disappoint you and not be healthy. And I find that hope, when used in the right way, could actually be really practical. Like if people could be hopeful in a reasonable capacity, it would actually help them to be able to do better in life. I know this from my own case, and when I work with my clients, when I provide a reasonable sense of hope, uh, and give a sense of hope so that the hope can be resourceful to them, they tend to do better in life. So when you are hopeful, what it does is that it helps open up your mind. So you're more likely to look for resources. You're more likely to feel motivated in your life. So sometimes when the mind takes over, we think that we're being very realistic. But when we channel all our energy into our forebrain and we're very fixated on trying to solve problems a very certain kind of way, we set all these expectations and plans and we feel like we just have to just go after them. What happens is that even though we feel like we're being very realistic, um, it's a very kind of narrow approach, and we could easily grow pessimistic without knowing it. Because when we constantly think about problems, problems just beget more problems, which beget more problems. So we kind of subconsciously see the world from the standpoint of problems, that there's just problems everywhere. And we're just trying to fix problems. And it's actually a pessimistic view. And what happens is that people start to become unmotivated. So you might start to think, I'm working very hard. I'm thinking very hard to try to solve my problems, but I feel like I'm just like moving through molasses and going back to square one over and over again. So what I want to talk about here is that even though hope, seems optimistic, it's also can be resourceful. Hope to a certain extent can become unrealistic, right? And that's not going to be helpful. But I'm talking about a very practical type of hope. So I kind of want you to imagine that you're lost in a forest and you try to find your way. When you have expectations and your mind's just constantly thinking and turning and turning and turning, it's almost as if you have these blinders on like this and you're just only looking at what is right in front of you. And you're very fixated on a very specific certain pathway in order to get out. And if things don't meet your expectations, if things go the wrong way, then you're going to be utterly disappointed. Like it has to go this path. So when your mind's in that kind of when you're in that kind of mindset, you think that there's only one way to do things, and any kind of deviation starts to feel like it's a problem, or it's just you're just going in the wrong direction. So a different kind of approach is that when you're in a forest and you're lost, you're walking forward, but you're looking around you because you have like a sense of hope. You have a sense of there are possibilities out there. There are resources out there. It doesn't mean that you're not moving forward. You could be hopeful in a useless way in that you feel hopeful, but you're not moving forward at all, right? You're still moving forward. You're still trying to understand things. And yes, to a certain degree, you're figuring things out, right? But you keep your eyes open for different kind of possibilities and different kind of pathways that might show themselves, and different kind of resources, right? When we have our blinders up like this, there's a lot that we could miss out on. So that is the basic difference. When you're hopeful, you still hold to a certain kind of vision. It doesn't mean that you're just dilly-dallying through life. You hold to a certain kind of vision, but you're not tied to a specific way that vision has to manifest in your life. So once you go on a detour, you don't like freak out. You know, okay, this is not what I expected, but maybe this leads to a different possibility. Maybe this is a different way that I could realize my vision. And over time, you revisit your vision and you kind of hone it. So the thing is, you can never start off with exactly the same mission as you thought. So over time, with life experience, that vision of yours will change. It makes sense. that it would. So sometimes we feel like we have to stick to a plan. But when we do that, that means that we are attached to how things should be. Planning no longer becomes a tool, it becomes the truth. So you want to detach yourself from your plans. And often when we get stuck in our minds, we're just in this zone where we're just planning, and needing things to turn out a certain kind of way. So there's a different kind of approach. When you are hopeful, you're open, you still make plans. But planning is a tool. And of course, things are not going to go according to plan. You're always going to get new information that changes your plans. So when you see plans no longer as the truth, but as a tool and not something to just hold on or latch onto, you're going to be a lot more resourceful. So it's important to keep your eyes peeled and open. And when you're hopeful, it helps relax your body, helps open up your body and your mind. When you are in your mind, you're very tense, you're very rigid. It's hard to really move, and it's hard to think clearly when you're in that state. There's two kind of resources. One's the outer resources I was talking about. When you're hopeful, you believe there are things out there that you could use to be able to help you on your journey. It doesn't matter where you are. There's some things that you could use. You don't have to find the perfect things, but whatever you run across in your journey could potentially be useful to you. There's also inner resources too. When you're hopeful, you have a sense of trust in yourself. You trust that you could build resilience. You trust that you're able to adapt your perspective and have a wider perspective on life. And so when we're hopeful, it makes us stronger, and it's also healthier for us as well. It's also practical because we're really making the most use of things. When we're in our minds, we could think that we're being very practical or very reasonable, but that turns out not to be the case because we end up being very rigid and we become very narrow-minded. We get tied to expectations, and when things don't turn out the right way, there's a lot of negative and harsh self-talk, and that may seem like it's reasonable, but actually just ends up bringing us down and making us more pessimistic in our lives. So in order to hammer in what I've spoken about here, I really recommend these articles that I've written about hope. I've written 3 articles about hope, and they go into a lot more detail what I'm talking about here in different kinds of ways. One's called Living with Hope Rather Than Expectations. I really delineate the difference. Cultivating a practical type of hope when we feel lost rather than an unreasonable kind of hope. And Believing Hope to Heal, I talk about like there's a way that you could breathe that could make you feel more hopeful in your life. I'll have a link to the articles down below in the description box and also the comments section. And if you like what you see here, be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.